That's how it started. Not with a kiss. Not with a confession. But with a nearness so quiet, so accidental it couldn't have been, but was. It was just after 5 p.m. One of those slow, sun-drunk afternoons when the day refuses to end politely. I'd stopped at the grocery store on my way home, craving something salty and indulgent, olive tapenade, maybe, or stuffed grape leaves. Something decadent but casual. I wasn't in a rush. I moved through the aisles like someone sleepwalking through their routine, until I felt it. A presence. Warmth first, then the soft shift of air. He was suddenly beside me, reaching for the same jar I was eyeing, his body aligned with mine like a shadow stitched to my side. We didn't touch. Not really. But I felt him like a second skin sliding into place over mine. His shoulder brushed mine lightly. Intentional? I don't know. But he didn't apologize. And I didn't step back. I should have. That's what polite people do, right? You smile, you retreat, you let the moment pass without giving it breath. But something inside me rebelled, quietly, firmly. I stayed where I was. I let him linger. I could feel the heat rising from his skin, subtle and steady. The space between us was thin enough to tremble. My fingers wrapped around the jar, but my body stayed rooted, as if some magnetic pull had snapped into place between us. I glanced up, and that was the real mistake. Because he was looking at me. Not casually. Not like a stranger who happened to bump into someone pretty at the market. His gaze held weight. He looked like a man who'd been quiet too long, and suddenly remembered how to want something. He smiled. Barely. Just the corner of his mouth. Like he didn't want to scare me away. You like this one? He asked, nodding toward the jar still between my fingers. My throat caught. It was such an innocent question. So ordinary. But the way he asked it, it curled around me like a secret. Yeah. I managed, voice lower than I intended. It's intense. Salty. I saw something flicker in his eyes. And then he stepped just a breath closer. Close enough that I could smell the faint citrus on his skin, or maybe it was cologne, or maybe just the scent of the sun on him. Whatever it was, it pulled me deeper into the moment. I felt heat rise in my neck. Every nerve in my body stood on edge. And still I didn't move. I didn't move when his eyes dropped to my mouth. I didn't move when his fingers brushed mine as he reached for the jar. I didn't move because I didn't want to. That was the beginning. Not the whole story. Just the breath before it all unraveled. And then, right before I could say something, his phone rang. Loud. Sharp. Breaking the moment in two. He glanced at the screen, jaw tight. And what I saw there changed everything. His jaw clenched when he looked at the screen. Just a flicker, barely a change, but I noticed. Something in him recoiled, like the moment had been too honest, too raw, and now he had to sheath it again. He didn't answer the call. Just pressed the side button quietly, tucked the phone away, and then he looked at me like nothing had happened. But everything had. I smiled, trying to pretend the air between us hadn't just tightened like a rope around my ribs. Important? I asked, my voice trying to stay casual, but sounding breathier than I meant. He shook his head slowly, eyes not leaving mine. No, he said. Not right now. I nodded, but inside I felt like I was balancing on a wire. There was so much he didn't say in those 3 words. And the way he was still standing close, still angled toward me like the rest of the store didn't exist, it felt deliberate. Measured. Like he was making a choice. Or trying not to. I looked down at the jar still in my hand, suddenly absurdly aware of how long we'd both just stood here, suspended between conversation and something else entirely. His fingers brushed mine again. Not a mistake this time. A little slower. A little firmer. I've seen you before, he said. It wasn't a question. My heart skipped. I know, I replied softly, surprising even myself. I should have played it off. Pretended I hadn't noticed. But I had. I noticed him weeks ago, maybe longer. At the cafe near my place. Sometimes at the bookstore downtown, in the aisles near the poetry section. Always alone. Always quiet. Always magnetic in that way people are when they're completely unaware of how much space they take up in your mind. We hadn't spoken until now. But somehow it didn't feel like a beginning. It felt like something already halfway written. There was a long pause. His eyes were still on me. You live around here? He asked. I nodded. Good, he said, voice lower. So this won't be the last time I see you. My breath caught. There it was again, that undertone velvety and unspoken. I didn't know this man. Not really. But I knew this feeling. The slow unfolding. The heat behind the glance. The dangerous pull of something you shouldn't want this badly, this fast. He reached past me to grab his own jar. His shoulder grazing mine again, this time unmistakably on purpose. The contact was brief, but I swear I felt it for hours after. Like the shape of him had left an impression just under my skin. He walked away without saying goodbye. Didn't need to. And I stood there still holding mine, pulse racing, wondering how something so simple, olive tapenade and a too long glance, could make me feel like I just stepped off the edge of something sharp and sweet and utterly new. I thought that was the end. A beautiful, fleeting moment between strangers. But then, that night around 11 p.m., I got a message. No name. Just a number. And 2 words. You stayed. That was the message. No emoji. No follow-up. Just 2 words that pressed into my skin like a fingerprint I couldn't rub away. I stared at the screen, curled up in bed, the room lit only by the soft glow of my bedside lamp. Outside, the city exhaled its quiet. A car in the distance, wind brushing against my window, the whisper of midnight slipping in too soon. I should have felt sleepy. I didn't. My body was awake in the way that only certain thoughts can wake you. Slow burning, restless, stretched tight across a single memory. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. And then I typed. So did you. I watched the message sit there, read. No reply for almost a minute. My heart picked up. Was that too much? Too bold? Too real? Then the 3 dots appeared. I shouldn't have, he wrote. And immediately followed it with, but I wanted to. Something twisted low in my stomach. A gentle ache. A hum that felt like it belonged under my skin, not inside my phone. I swallowed hard. Every part of me wanted to ask him what he meant, but I already knew. That moment in the store hadn't been about groceries. It was about energy. The kind you can't manufacture. The kind you feel in the back of your knees and the base of your spine. I typed again. Did it feel like something to you? I regretted it the second I hit send. Too open. Too vulnerable. I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Because if he said no, I'd have to pretend I hadn't been lying here for hours thinking about the shape of his voice and the way the air felt right before he almost touched me. But he didn't say no. He responded with, it felt like I was standing next to a line I wanted to cross. I stared at that sentence for a long time. A line. He said it like he knew. Like he wasn't just talking about proximity or touch. Like he understood that sometimes desire is the most dangerous thing in the world. Not because of what it asks for, but because of what it dares us to imagine. I should have put the phone down, closed the window, gone to sleep, but instead I typed, what if I wanted you to cross it? And then I turned my phone over and placed it on the nightstand, heart slamming, breath shallow, skin flushed like I just admitted a secret out loud. I didn't check the screen again. Not for a while. I lay there in the dark, hand pressed to my chest, feeling every heartbeat echo with the weight of that message. Because even if he never responded, I had already said it. But when I finally picked up the phone again, his reply was waiting. Then tell me where it begins. I felt it before I understood it. The way his voice curled around me like something I wasn't supposed to hold. It wasn't just what he said. It was how he said it. Quiet. Careful. Like he knew he was touching something sacred, something I hadn't meant to give. I didn't respond right away. Because I knew what he meant. That stillness, the way I didn't move, it wasn't passive. It was permission. My breath caught, then slipped out slow, shaky. I turned to face him, my body so close now I could feel the distance in millimeters. His eyes searched mine like they were looking for something specific. Something I hadn't realized I'd shown him that day in the aisle. I wanted to, I said, barely above a whisper. Move, I mean. But I didn't. His eyes didn't waver. Why not? The question hit me harder than it should have. I could have lied. I could have told him I was distracted. That it was nothing. That I was just tired and in my own head. But instead, I said the truth. Because if I moved, I was afraid the moment would disappear. And just like that, the space between us shifted again. Not smaller. Just more charged. I watched him breathe, slow and deliberate, like he needed to steady himself before he said anything else. I felt it too, he murmured. Like something had already started, and neither of us knew how far it would go. My fingers curled against the bar. I felt unsteady, like the floor beneath us had turned to water and we were both pretending to know how to float. The bartender came by, breaking the moment with polite distraction. We both smiled, nodded, mumbled thanks, but our eyes stayed locked even as he walked away. The tension didn't break. It paused. He leaned a little closer, his hand now brushing against mine. Still not holding it, not claiming it, just resting there, warm and deliberate. A single finger moved, grazing my knuckle. Tiny, precise. Enough to make my skin feel like it was burning in the best possible way. I want to see you, he said. I blinked. You're seeing me right now. He shook his head slowly. No. I mean see you. Where you live. Where you think. Where you breathe when no one's watching. It wasn't a come on. It wasn't even a question. It was something quieter. More intimate. More dangerous. Because it meant stepping out of the safety of this dim bar and into something else. Something less anonymous. Something real. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because part of me already knew what would happen if I let him in. This wasn't about a drink. Or a moment. Or a kiss stolen under the excuse of alcohol and low light. This was a threshold. And we were both standing on it. I don't usually do this, I said quietly. I know, he replied. And then, still watching me, still waiting for me to decide. He took his hand and slowly, deliberately, turned it palm up on the bar. An invitation. No pressure. Just a place to land. I stared at it. At the lines of his hand. The quiet steadiness of it. And without looking away, I placed mine in his. We didn't speak much on the way to my apartment. The air between us was thick with all the things we weren't saying. All the tension that had been building since the grocery aisle, now stretched taut between our footsteps. I remember walking slightly ahead of him, feeling the weight of his gaze on the back of my neck. Every step felt amplified. The click of my heels on pavement, the way my coat shifted around my shoulders, the heat that pooled at the base of my spine, inching upward. He didn't touch me, but I felt him, every inch of him, like a second shadow. By the time we reached my building, I could barely get the key in the door. My fingers trembled just slightly. He didn't say anything about it. Didn't offer to help. He just waited. Patient. Focused. Like whatever happened next needed to be mine to choose. I opened the door. Stepped inside. Held it for him. He paused on the threshold just long enough for me to notice. Like he was aware this was more than geography, this was trust. My space. My scent in the air. My vulnerability laid bare in the texture of blankets, the way my shoes sat by the door, the faint scent of my shampoo lingering in the hallway. He walked in. Slowly. Quietly. I watched him take it in, the smallness of the space, the softness of the light, the way the room held silence like something sacred. He didn't sit. He didn't ask. He just stood there, coat still on, hands in his pockets, like he didn't want to assume he was allowed to belong here. That should have made me feel guarded. But it didn't. It made me want to invite him further in. I slid my coat from my shoulders and tossed it over the back of a chair. He followed. His movements were careful, precise, not nervous, just deliberate. Like every step he took closer to me was a kind of reverence. He looked around once more, then back at me. This feels like you, he said, voice low. I nodded. It is. He walked to the window, looked out over the city. Lights flickering like distant promises. Then he turned back, eyes softer now. Curious. Can I ask you something? He said. Of course. He hesitated, the first real hesitation I'd seen in him. And then, why did you stay so still that day? He wasn't talking about the store anymore. He was asking about something deeper. Why did I let him so close? Why didn't I retreat? Why, when my body said this is dangerous, did my soul say let it happen? I opened my mouth, closed it. My throat tightened, and before I could answer, the photo fell. It was on the shelf by the window, a small silver frame. It must have been bumped when he leaned nearby. It clattered to the floor, not loudly, just enough to make both of us freeze. He bent to pick it up, turned it in his hand, and then his expression changed. The air shifted again. Not with desire this time. With recognition. He looked at the photo, then at me. And very quietly, very carefully, he asked, "Who is this?" I stepped forward slowly, looked at the photo in his hands, felt my breath catch in my chest. And then I said the thing I hadn't planned to say. "Not tonight. Maybe not ever. That's my sister." I hadn't meant to say it like that. So flat. So final. But the words left my mouth before I could soften them, and in the silence that followed, I felt something inside him go still. He looked at me, then back at the photo in his hand. It was one of the only pictures I kept out in the open. The two of us sitting on a dock laughing, her hair wild in the wind, mine tucked behind one ear. We looked young. Free. Before life split us like a branch. "She looks familiar," he said quietly. I said nothing. Just watched him as the recognition crept into his features. Not all at once but in pieces. A flicker in his brow. A shift in his jaw. And then, his mouth opened slightly. He turned toward me, eyes darker now like something was trying to surface. "Is her name Lily?" My stomach dropped. "Yes." The room tilted, not literally but emotionally. Everything that had been humming beneath the surface between us. Every glance and breath and silent ache, it all twisted. He stepped back. Just a little. Enough for the air between us to feel colder. "I knew her," he said. "A long time ago. I didn't ask how. I didn't have to. I could see it. The ache behind his words. The way he said her name, not casually, not possessively. Carefully. As if it still lived somewhere inside him. "She never mentioned you," I said. He smiled faintly without humor. "We weren't meant to last." And yet something in his eyes said otherwise. Something in the tension of his shoulders. Something in the way he still held the photo like it was glass, delicate and full of echoes. I walked over, took it from his hands, set it gently back on the shelf, face down this time. "She's married now," I added like that might smooth the wrinkles between us. "Moved upstate. Has a baby." He nodded. I figured. A silence fell over us, heavy with things unsaid. And then he spoke again, voice lower now. "I didn't know you were her sister." If I had. He didn't finish the sentence. Maybe he didn't need to. But I stepped closer. One pace. Two. Until we were face to face again, the photo behind us and only this moment between us. "I know," I whispered. "But you didn't. And now you do." He looked at me like he was trying to decide whether to stay or run. I could see it all, the guilt, the hesitation, the pull. But also the heat. Still there. Still smoldering. Because whatever history lived behind us, whatever lines had just been blurred, this wasn't about Lily anymore. This was about me. About now. About the way my breath hitched when he looked at my mouth, and the way his hand hovered just close enough to mine that the space between our fingers ached. "I should go," he said. And then softer. "But I don't want to." The truth cracked open between us like a secret neither of us could unhear. And before I could say anything, he reached out, touched my wrist. Lightly, like a question. And I didn't pull away. His fingers touched the inside of my wrist, barely there, like he was afraid of what might happen if he pressed harder. But he didn't need to. The heat of that touch spread through me like a ripple across still water. Gentle. Deep. Unstoppable. I didn't move. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, searching. Not for permission but for truth. Was this real? Could we allow it? "I don't know what this is," I whispered. "I just know it doesn't feel wrong." He closed his eyes for a second, like he needed the darkness to gather himself. When he opened them again, the hesitation had faded. Not into certainty but into clarity. "Neither do I," he said. "But I don't want to undo it." That was all it took. Not a declaration. Not a promise. Just that. We didn't rush toward each other. We let the space shrink slowly, second by second, until there was no room for anything else. No past. No name. No photo on the shelf. Just breath and skin and the quiet chaos of two people finally stepping into the moment they'd been circling for days. His forehead touched mine. Not a kiss. Just contact. Soft. Devastating. Beautiful. I felt my hands move, one finding the side of his neck, the other resting just below his ribs. I could feel his heartbeat there, rapid and steady, matching mine. We stayed like that, suspended, breathing into each other, letting the nearness say everything our mouths didn't yet dare to. When our lips finally met, it wasn't urgent. It was inevitable. Slow. Careful. Reverent. The kind of kiss that didn't ask for more, it became more. The kind that says, I see you. I want you. I'm terrified of what happens next. And still I'm here. His hands moved along my back, gently at first, then more surely, like he was mapping something sacred. My breath caught against his. We weren't undressing. We weren't rushing. It wasn't about hunger. It was about presence. We melted into each other, not just bodies but hearts. The rhythm of our touch slowed everything around us. My skin buzzed under his hands. I felt seen, felt chosen, and somehow more myself than I'd felt in months. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us stepped back. He rested his forehead to mine again, whispered, I didn't come here for this, but I'm glad I stayed. I smiled, heart breaking open with something soft and unfamiliar. So am I. He didn't stay the night. We didn't talk about what would happen next. But he kissed me again at the door, longer this time and deeper, like he wanted to leave something behind on my lips. And when I closed the door, alone again in the hush of my apartment, I didn't feel hollow. I felt changed. Because sometimes what starts with a brush of skin in a grocery store aisle turns into something that rewrites your body's memory of touch.